The chill of winter had seeped into my bones, a cold that went deeper than just the weather. It had been 3 months since my ex-wife and I had separated, and in those early days, it seemed she was winning every battle. Our home, once a sanctuary, had become a battleground of wills, where her insatiable demands echoed through the empty rooms like a haunting refrain. Every night, as I lay in bed alone, I could hear the ghostly echoes of our arguments reverberating off the walls, a reminder of the life we once shared and the war we now waged. Stepping back, let me introduce myself. I'm Alex, a 35-year-old software engineer who had built a comfortable life over the years. I had married Emily, a 33-year-old marketing executive, 10 years ago. We met in college and quickly became inseparable, sharing dreams and aspirations of building a life together. Our marriage, at least in the beginning, was filled with love, passion, and mutual respect. We bought a house in the suburbs, a place we envisioned raising our family. We had 2 beautiful children, a son named Jake and a daughter named Lily, who became the center of our world. However, as the years passed, the pressures of work, parenthood, and life's unexpected challenges began to take their toll. Emily's career took off, demanding more of her time and energy, while I struggled to balance my job and responsibilities at home. The love that once seemed unbreakable started to fray at the edges, giving way to resentment and misunderstanding. Arguments that began as minor disagreements evolved into full-blown battles, with neither of us willing to back down. The breaking point came when I discovered Emily had been seeing someone else. The betrayal cut deep, shattering the fragile trust that remained. I confronted her, and the ensuing argument was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. We decided to separate, thinking it would be a temporary measure to clear our heads and possibly reconcile. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, it became evident that reconciliation was a distant dream. Instead, we found ourselves entangled in a bitter divorce battle, with Emily's demands growing more aggressive by the day. Emily, once the loving and supportive partner, had transformed into a fierce adversary. She was determined to get everything she could from the separation, and her tactics were as cold as the winter chill that now seemed to permeate every aspect of my life. Initially, I had tried to be reasonable, offering her fair splits of our assets, hoping to reach an amicable resolution. But every suggestion was met with her fury, each rejection accompanied by a new round of demands. She knew the legal system inside out, or at least she acted like she did, and her threats of dragging me through the courts felt like a noose tightening around my neck. The fear of losing everything, of being financially and emotionally drained, kept me compliant. One evening, as I was putting the kids to bed, Emily barged in with a stack of papers. "You need to sign these," she demanded, her voice as cold as ice. The documents outlined an agreement that was heavily skewed in her favor, demanding a significant portion of my income for spousal support. When I hesitated, she smirked, "If you don't sign, I'll make sure you never see Jake and Lily again." It was a direct attack on my greatest vulnerability, and she knew it. Another time, during a heated argument, Emily casually mentioned a loophole in our mortgage agreement. "You realize that if I default on the payments, they'll come after you for the full amount, right?" I checked with a lawyer. She wasn't bluffing. She had indeed consulted a lawyer and was fully aware of the financial chaos she could unleash. Her knowledge of these legal intricacies and her willingness to exploit them made every interaction a minefield. Her tactics were brutal and manipulative. She leveraged our 2 children against me, knowing my love for them was my greatest vulnerability. Every refusal to her demands was met with threats of taking the kids away, painting me as the unfit parent. I was terrified of losing them, and she exploited that fear mercilessly. Her threats were not just about money. They were about control, about ensuring I remained under her thumb. Each day, the weight of her threats bore down on me, turning the simplest tasks into Herculean efforts. It was clear Emily had been planning her moves long before our separation. At the first mediation session, she walked in with an air of smug confidence, a predator ready to pounce on its prey. The mediator laid out the ground rules, and we both signed the agreement. I had hoped this would be a step toward resolution, but she derailed every question with accusations and manipulations. At one point, She even climbed onto the table to scream in my face, forcing the mediator to end the session early. I left that room feeling more defeated than ever, the walls of my world closing in around me. 3 days later, I was served with a court summons. She had filed for spousal support, claiming I had only given her a paltry sum in the past 3 months. The audacity of her lies was staggering, but she seemed unfazed. She knew her way around the system, and it felt like I was drowning in her sea of deceit. The day of the hearing arrived, and as I sat in the hallway, she appeared, radiating confidence. She started her familiar rant, but this time, I was prepared. I wrote down everything she said, documenting her threats and accusations. When she realized what I was doing, she finally fell silent, but the damage was done. In the courtroom, she painted herself as the victim, spinning tales of hardship and neglect. Her lawyer, a slick and confident man, presented a well-crafted case that painted me as the villain. To my shock, they brought in testimonials from neighbors and old friends from the country club. One after another, they spoke of seeing me neglect the kids, hearing us argue, and even insinuated I had a drinking problem. These were people I had known for years, people I thought were friends, but it was clear Emily had been sowing seeds of doubt and garnering support long before we even discussed separation. Despite the barrage of false testimonials, the court officer listened patiently, but I could see the skepticism in her eyes. When it was my turn, I presented my evidence, methodically going through each transaction and countering every lie. Her attempts to interrupt were futile, and the court officer warned her repeatedly to stay silent. The courtroom was tense as Emily's lawyer, with his slick demeanor and confident smile, presented their case. My stomach churned as I watched him craft a narrative that painted me as the neglectful, irresponsible husband. Each fake testimonial from neighbors and old friends was like a dagger to my heart, their words dripping with deceit. It became painfully clear that Emily had been planning this long before our separation. When the court officer ruled in her favor, awarding her a significant sum of money, the room spun. Her lawyer smirked triumphantly, and Emily walked out with an air of victory. The system I had hoped would protect me had failed, and I was left reeling from the blow. The aftermath of the hearing was a whirlwind of despair and confusion. I couldn't understand how she had managed to win despite the truth being on my side. In the days that followed, I sank into a deep pit of desperation. I pored over every detail of the case, trying to find where I had gone wrong. One sleepless night, as I reviewed the old emails and documents, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. Buried in a series of messages exchanged with a mutual friend, I found evidence of her infidelity. But it wasn't just any affair. It was with her lawyer, the very man who had orchestrated her victory in court. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. They had meticulously planned the entire scheme to bleed me dry, using his legal expertise to navigate the system to their advantage. The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. I remembered the smug confidence of her lawyer, the way he always seemed to know exactly what to say and do to undermine my case. It was all part of their plan. As the weight of this discovery pressed down on me, I felt overwhelmed and hopeless. I needed to expose their scheme, to show the court the depths of their deceit, but I didn't know where to start. One particularly dismal evening, I found myself at the bar of the country club, nursing a drink and trying to numb the pain. The familiar surroundings offered little comfort, but it was a place to escape my thoughts, if only for a moment. That's when I met David. He was a lawyer, well known at the club for his fierce defense tactics and his empathy for those in distress. We had seen each other around, exchanged polite nods, but never really talked. That night, he approached me, noticing my despair. David didn't pry, but his presence was comforting. As the evening wore on and the drinks flowed, I found myself opening up to him. I told him everything: the failed marriage, the courtroom battle, and the devastating discovery of the affair and conspiracy. David listened intently, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he took a deep breath and said he had seen something like this before. His own divorce wasn't much different. His ex and her lawyer did everything they could to destroy him, but he fought back and won. He offered to help me pro bono, seeing in my case a chance to right the wrongs he had faced. We discussed the evidence I had uncovered, and David's legal mind quickly pieced together a strategy. It was then that David remembered a unique detail from our past, a prenuptial agreement Emily and I had signed during a wild weekend in Vegas. Years ago, during a spontaneous and somewhat drunken decision, Emily and I had decided to get married at one of those express chapels in Vegas. Amidst laughter and a series of drinks, we felt fancy and decided to draft a prenuptial agreement. Without much thought and under the influence of alcohol, we had put in only one clause, a fidelity clause, as a sort of joke. Neither Emily nor her lawyer seemed to remember this agreement, likely dismissing it as a whimsical relic of our past. What they didn't count on was that this agreement, despite its origins, held legal power. David's eyes lit up with the realization that this could be our ace in the hole. Armed with this newfound evidence, David and I prepared for the courtroom battle. The stakes were high, but with David's expertise and our solid evidence, I felt a glimmer of hope. We compiled the email exchanges, highlighting the planning and manipulation. It was a damning piece of evidence that painted a clear picture of their conspiracy. The prenuptial agreement, with its single fidelity clause, was the trump card we needed. The courtroom was tense as we presented the new evidence. My ex-wife's lawyer, who had been confident and smug throughout the proceedings, now looked visibly shaken. The court officer reviewed the documents carefully, the weight of the evidence clear in her expression. When the truth of their collusion was revealed, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. My ex-wife and her lawyer lover had their smugness replaced by panic and desperation. The court officer's ruling was swift and decisive. Not only were all her financial claims dismissed, but they were also fined for their deceit and manipulation. The prenuptial agreement's fidelity clause nullified her previous winnings, and she was ordered to return the money she had received. The aftermath of exposing their conspiracy was a whirlwind. The legal victories were numerous, but they came with a heavy emotional toll. I had been through the ringer, but I emerged stronger, more resolute. The house that had once felt like a prison now felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could rebuild and find peace. The story of my ex-wife's malicious compliance and her ultimate downfall became a cautionary tale among my friends and colleagues. It was a story of resilience, of standing up against manipulation and deceit. But for me, it was also a story of survival, of finding the strength to reclaim my life and move forward. As time passed, the wounds began to heal. I found new purpose, new passions, and a renewed sense of self. The darkness of the past slowly gave way to the light of a new beginning. The lessons learned from the battles I had fought shaped me, giving me the resilience to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With each new day, I embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. The story of my ex-wife's malicious compliance was just one chapter in a much larger story, a story of hope, resilience, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit.